This insane lady sued her husband for rape and assault. This lady is called Sherry Shaw, and Sherry is married to this basketballer, Greg. Greg was born of 1964, June 22nd in Austin. Greg started as an emerging star, always being sent away for minor games. He quickly drafted into the NBA and became an immediate sensation, rising through the ranks. Every brand wanted to work with him. He quickly started to make a name for himself and get that money. Throughout his journey, Greg was dating his high school sweetheart, Sherry. They'd been dating for the past 6 years, but little by little, cracks started to show in their relationship. Sherry started complaining that Greg never had time for her. She was feeling neglected and wanted to spend more time with him. Greg kept reassuring her that he loved her and that he would continue to be with her, but he had to be honest that his career was taking so much of his time. But they decided to stay together and work together and ensure that they didn't become like those other marriages which failed due to stress of sportsmanship. As time went on, they continued to have several conversations about Greg's lack of attention and his lack of time and Sherry's ever-growing frustration while with the whole debacle. Eventually, they got married and tied the knot in 1992, and soon after, they welcomed a baby boy. Sherry brought up the fact that they are now starting a family and she really wanted Greg to be a lot more present. He promised he would retire in a few years and then would spend the rest of their days together as a family and grow together, enjoying fruits of their labor. 6 years later, Greg is ready to retire. He's ready to come back and spend a lot more time with his family. Unfortunately, around that same time, their son falls sick, severely sick to the point that they had to rush him to the hospital, requesting doctors to check on him. A doctor comes out and allows Sherry to see their child and speaks to Greg in private and informs him that their child was suffering from a kidney failure and needs a transplant as soon as possible. Devastated and confused, Greg asks the doctor what they could do. The doctor says unfortunately some of the things happens and the child is small, just 6 years old. And so Greg says he was going to give his kidney to his child. So he's ready to do all the tests and he'll do whatever he needs to do to donate his kidney to his child. Sherry comes in and tells them to calm down, that they can get a second option. It seems like she was trying to cover up for whatever mess she had caused while her husband was away. Greg understands where she's coming from, but he's like, nah, that will take so long. It's not a guaranteed process. We don't know what will happen. I cannot lose my child. I'll go through the testing. So he goes in with the doctors and gets all the tests and examinations done. And the doctor says he'll reach out to him in a few days. After a few days, the doctor calls Greg and tells him to come to the hospital, that he wants to speak to him directly. At the hospital, Greg is informed that they did the test and checks, and unfortunately there's not much incompatibility between his kidney and for his child. Greg said he understands sometimes these things happen, but the doctor says no. Usually, with the parent, sometimes the match is lower or the match is incompatible due to some traces. There's always something connected to the child, but for him, there was absolutely no connection between him and the child. Then the doctor asked if his child is adopted, but Greg was like, no. He started insulting the doctor, wanting to shout, and storms out of the hospital in anger, not caring about the paparazzi trying to take pictures of him. Upon his arrival at home, he processes this and thinks about it, and it started to weigh on him. Is that child really his? Is there something he doesn't know? So again he returns to the hospital the following day and requests that they perform a DNA test on his child. The DNA test results came back and there was 0% that is the child's father. In that moment, Greg realizes that he has been lied to for several years. He storms home, finds Sherry at home and smacks her. She falls to the ground confused, shouting, I don't know what's going on. Why? You tell me. Have you cheated on me? I've just found out that the child is not mine. Sherry tries to scramble back up and Greg smacks her again. You need to tell me the truth. Realizing the anger in his voice and in his tone, and what is going through. Sherry confesses. She said, "Look, you were never around. You were always away. You don't listen when I speak to you. I tried to speak to you, but you didn't care. Eventually, I found a shoulder to cry on in Mike Scott. Now, Mike is a National League Award winner. He had my time and he had energy for me, and eventually an affair started. But that's not all. She confesses having an affair with Mike for all those years, and that she's currently 7 weeks pregnant with Mike's second child. Greg said, "Absolutely not. Hell no. You'll get out of my house. You'll take yourself and your child out of my life." He throws her out. A few days later, news break. Greg has found out that his child is not biologically his. Newspapers are printing, blogs are discussing, podcasts are telling stories, opinions. Everybody is talking about it. Greg said he'll not stand for this madness. He wants nothing to do with Sherry. He is filing for divorce. That divorce quickly turned nasty. Sherry had signed up for a prenup in an attempt to prove that she wasn't after his money. But then she cheated. The child was not Greg's, and Greg owed her nothing. Sherry left with her clothes on her back and a child with a ruined reputation. But that was not the end. Realizing that she was going nowhere and had no one to turn to, Sherry set out for revenge. She filed for a $200 million lawsuit against Greg, stating rape and assault. Late one night, Greg gets a call from his lawyer. The lawyer told him, "Sir, we have a situation. Sir, Sherry has filed a lawsuit against you for rape and assault." Greg disagreed. He didn't understand how he could be accused of such things. That was his wife. He would never rape her. How could he? His lawyer informed him that she stated that on March 17, 2001, you initiated interest requesting intercourse. She disagreed, stating disinterest and exhaustion. You, however, proceeded and went ahead with the act. This is your first count of rape. Your second count of rape during that same evening. You, without her consent, proceeded, and then you insert through her back door. This is your second count of sexual assault. Greg said, I can potentially remember that night, that she wasn't dissatisfied. She wasn't dissatisfied. She wasn't happy. She was okay with it. We enjoyed ourselves. What's going on? The lawyer said, "Look, unfortunately for you, she stated once that she was uninterested and you should have stopped. Secondly, she did not consent to you to use her back door. That is in today's laws qualify as rape." In addition, the lawyer stated that unfortunately for Greg, the case wasn't looking so good for him. The law will tend to favor his woman. So whatever he's going to do, he must do it now. Greg was arrested with charges of spousal rape. However, the case against him quickly fell apart as investigators found inconsistencies in Sherry's story, especially her own diary entries which stated otherwise, and so all the charges were dropped in 1995. After these criminal charges were dropped, Greg Anderson also counterfiled a $200 million civil lawsuit against Sherry for immense damage caused by her false accusations. The case was later settled out of court in 1998.